everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to be talking about the if I could only keep 10 books, these would be the books that I would keep. I was inspired to make this video after watching What Victoria Read do this, and I will leave the link to her video down below, and if she's not the original source, I'll also leave the original source of where she got the idea from down below as well in the description box. So yeah, if I could only keep 10 books, these are the books that I would keep. Now, I just have to preface this with I don't do favourites. You asked me for what my favourite flavour of ice cream is, and I list about 5. You asked me what my favourite chocolate is. Well, chocolate's a bit easier. My all-time favourite chocolate is Dairy Milk, just in case you wanted to send me any. However, when it comes to like picking one favourite or picking in quite a big group, 10 favourites, it's really difficult. So I want to preface this by when I mention a book that's part of a series, what I really mean in my head is the series. I scoured my shelves this morning and I was like 10, 10, 10. Like I was like, oh my gosh, only 10? And how quickly I picked up 10 amazing books if these were the only books that I could keep. I'm also kind of going off I'm thinking that even though I can only keep these, I can still read other books. I can still use library apps and go to the library and still read other books. These aren't the 10 books that I have to only read for the rest of my life. But like I say, when I mention a series, I kind of mean the whole series because I can't just do 10. So these are they in an order? They sort of are in an order. When anyone asks me what my favourite book of all time is, it's a toss-up between 2 books. The first one being Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Also just want to put it out there that I have a much nicer edition of this book. This is my mum's. She gave it to me. Also sat my A-levels with this book. So it has, like, before I had nice book tabs, I used to rip up post-it notes. So it has, like, post-it notes ripped up in special places because I had to use this for my A-level exam. And this book, like I say, I could pick a much nicer one to show you, but if I was to keep one, this would be the one I'd keep because this holds the most sentimental value because I am the most sentimental person ever. This story and this book just hold a very, very big place in my heart, and I promise I'm not going to go into so much depth in talking about every single book. I say that now, I'm going to. It's, you know, might as well just, yeah, get over it now. When I was a child, I was brought up around the story of Wuthering Heights. My mum watched a musical version that's called Heathcliff, and she had the video, she had the VHS for it, and I used to play that because the soundtrack I found so soothing when I was a young child and when I was ill, like up in the middle of the night, not very well. I'd put that VHS on. It's called Heathcliff. It's all done by like Cliff Richard. It was done years ago. My mum's a big Cliff Richard fan. Please don't hate. And I've just grown up around this story. Ever since then, I've grown up around this story, and it just holds a really, really special place in my heart. And I love it. And the characters are really questionable. The main characters, you're supposed to love them, but you're also supposed to hate them. And I don't know what else to say. I really don't know what else to say other than if you haven't read it, please give it a go. It's not for everybody, and I'm sure it's not the best book ever written, but for me, it's up there with my top books. And then the second book that I would say that's tied up there as with my favourite books, I think we could all guess that this was going to come up right in the top 10 books, Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. This is just really pivotal for me in my love of reading. It took me somewhere that I didn't expect to enjoy, and I don't know what's beeping, but something's beeping at me. It took me somewhere that I didn't expect to enjoy. It took me to a part of history that I never thought I would ever enjoy reading about, and I absolutely loved it. And I can only kind of like, this has just massively opened my eyes to the historical fiction genre. Historical fiction isn't just 1940s wartime or anything like that, which is what a lot of the historical fiction that I read was based around World War II. Like, and it absolutely ignited a love for Scotland as well. This book is such a diverse book in the sense of You could call it a romance, historical fiction. You could even say that it's sort of a sci-fi science fiction book because of the time travel elements that are in it as well. I love that we experience more than one time period in it. I love that it's really gritty and harsh and horrible, but also really lovely and loving. And when I say Outlander, obviously I mean, where are my Outlander books? Here. Please note I have a little Scottish bear in front of my Outlander books. I mean the whole series. Please note that. I mean the whole series when I talk about Outlander. Obviously, that goes without saying. I'm just gonna, this whole video is just gonna be me gushing about all these books I love, and I'm here for it. I am here for it. The next book I have to mention is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think I'm due a reread of this. I think I need to do a reread of this. Every single book that I've read by Taylor Jenkins Reid, I have absolutely loved. And what I really, really like is that I found them all very different. Sometimes you read a book by an author, or you read several books by an author, and they all kind of start to feel a bit samey. A lot of authors, but don't get me wrong, I enjoy, might have a similar sort of like structure to their writing, and kind of each book is a bit samey, but they've got different points in, but they've got a similar structure. Every book I've read by Taylor Jenkins Reid, I've absolutely fallen in love with and enjoyed, and kind of seen it as a standalone, if that makes sense. I know that sounds really stupid because they're all standalones, but you know what I mean. But I really, really think I need to do a reread of this because I loved it so much. I read it years ago, and I honestly, Kate, when I finished reading this, the first thing I did was Google Evelyn Hugo, her husband. I thought she was a real character. And I think that's what's really key about Taylor Jenkins Reid, is she, again, someone that creates worlds that are just so real and so just multi-dimensional, three-dimensional. Like, you just feel like you're in it and you were there. And I was there in 1950s, and I was there in LA, I was there in Hollywood with Evelyn Hugo, enjoying the trials and tribulations of her career and her life. And what an icon. Like, she's probably one of the most Googled people. She must be. And she's not even real. Like, how amazing is that, that Taylor Jenkins Reid can create a character that is so loved that people think she's real, and people Google her and want to know more about her because they think she's real. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Obviously, it goes without saying, I recommend all of these books on this video, in this video, 100%, 100%. The next book I'm going to mention is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is a book that I've put on here because I can imagine this book, this is the special edition, by the way, that I ordered, the anniversary edition. I feel like I was late to the party with this book. And the reason why I put this on the list is because A, it was amazing and hands down probably one of the best books I read last year. However, I also feel like this is the sort of book that I could read time and time and time again, and it never get old because of the nature of the story. And I feel like there's other things and different things you'd pick up each time reading it. And also I think at each point where I'm in a different position in my life and a different point in my life, I'll enjoy different aspects of it, if that makes sense. I love this book. I love the concept, and I just think it was an absolutely stunningly written, and just, it's amazing. It's amazing. Addie LaRue makes a deal with the devil to get out of a situation, and then becomes forgettable. And it's her story through time. Again, really enjoyed the time aspect in this as well. See what Outlander did to me? Made me a lover of different times, different eras. Love. Now, again, these books kind of symbolize series. But I can't do this video without talking about Sarah J. Maas. Now, I am a fake Maas fan because I have the whole Throne of Glass series up here on my shelf, and that's also Blood and Honey and Serpent and Dove. Yeah, Serpent and Dove, Blood and Honey on the end, because I had nowhere else to put them. But I haven't read all of the Throne of Glass series, so I kind of am a fake fan a little bit, and I'm sorry about that. And I do mean to remedy that this year as much as possible, read as much of Throne of Glass as I can. But because I started Sarah J Maas's work with A Court of Thorns and Roses, I kind of felt like going back to Throne of Glass was a bit disjointed, because Throne of Glass was her first work, and I didn't pick up and enjoy it as much as ACOTAR when I went back to it after reading like this whole series. So I kind of feel like I've missed the point and missed the right time to read it, but I am going to give it a good go. And I'm going to try again with Throne of Glass. But A Court of Thorns and Roses will always have a special place in my reading history and in my little reading heart, because this was what got me back into reading different sorts of books, fantasy, sci-fi. And I know that this isn't necessarily the most in-depth fantasy book ever, but at the time that I read this series, I was reading mostly contemporary fiction, contemporary romance, and a little bit of World War II fiction in there as well. And then I picked up this, and it made me realise I can actually enjoy fantasy. I can actually enjoy these sorts of other worlds that we read about. And I was like, okay, maybe I can read fantasy. Up until this point, I didn't think I could read it. I didn't think I could enjoy it. I thought I'd find it too like boring. And this is the series that, like I said, has a little special place in my reading heart, because it made me realise that I didn't just have to read contemporary and contemporary romance for the rest of my life. There was other stuff out there that actually I really enjoyed. I love this series, and I also love how this series has grown. You know, with A Court of Silver Flames that came out last February, back in 2021, when that came out, that was quite important for me, because it was a book that was finally kind of growing with its original readership. The story, you know, where the series first starts, it's YA, but now we've got adult books, and they've kind of like grown with us, if that makes sense. I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but us that read this when it was kind of newly released. I don't think I read this when it was newly released, but when we read it initially, now we're older, we don't want YA fantasy anymore. We want adult fantasy, and I'm loving that series is expanding and growing with its original readership. And I hope it will grow then with readers to come that start with this, which isn't really very YA, but they can grow with the series as well. Love it. And can't wait for the next instalment in this series either. And obviously, have to talk about Crescent City, because Crescent City I read in lockdown, and in 2020 loved it, and just felt it was a really fresh thing for me to read again. I'd been reading a lot of historical fiction because I was in my I think I'd read Outlander, and I was coming out the back end of reading Outlander and wanting to read books like Outlander. So I think, again, this was quite refreshing, because this is a little bit different from what I had been majority of reading. I recently reread it, and I loved it so much more second time round. And I'm currently reading House of Sky and Breath as I'm filming this, and I just love this. Love the characters, love the relationship, love the angst. Like, you just want stuff to happen in this book, and you're like, just do it, just do it. Sarah J Maas strings us along for a long time, but wouldn't have it any other way, would we? Wouldn't have it any other way. So, the next book is actually quite a recent read of mine, The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. A really, really recent read for me, and it's made it onto my top 10 list. And I just can't stop gushing about these books, because they're amazing, and they're like warm hugs for me. They're comfort books. I love them, even though they're about murder. I love the characters. I could imagine going to the retirement village. I can never remember what it's called. But I can imagine going to this retirement village, having a cup of tea with them all. I don't drink tea, but I would sit and have a cup of tea with them. I love the characters. They are hilarious. They are so three-dimensional. They're so real. And I really, really want to meet them. I really want to go and enjoy and join in on a Thursday Murder Club. I loved this so much. I loved the second one, and also really love that these are set in Sussex. Rich Dosman actually comes from Sussex, and so there's like little snippets that you get that he'll mention real places, and I'm like, I know where that is. I know where that is. And I just think that makes it so much more kind of like real for me as well, and really feel immersed with these characters and the storylines, and I'm just rooting for them all. I love them. I want them all to be my surrogate grandparents. End of. That's happening. The next one that kind of denotes a series is I Heart New York by Lindsay Kelk. Now, I feel like this series is a real pivotal series in my kind of like reading journey, because I feel like this is really what got me back into reading. Obviously, I've always read as a child, but throughout periods of my teenage years, reading and interest in reading has kind of peaked and troughed. I think you probably find when YouTube became really popular, kind of back in what, 2010, like around that sort of like late noughties, when YouTube became really popular, you'll probably find that my reading like dipped, and then it kind of peaked again, and then it kind of troughed again. When I 10 years ago, when I met my now fiance, I was hardly reading at all because I was enjoying spending time with him, and you know, you're growing up as a person. But this I really see as a series that kind of got me back into reading as a kind of a young adult. As a young adult, I love this series. I love Angela, the characters, her whole journey. I think it's so funny, so witty, and these just feel like real comfort books for me. Like I feel like I could pick up any one and enjoy it and fly through it. And I find them easy reads as well. I don't have to think too much when I read them. They're just so easy to read, and I love that in a book sometimes. And I choose the whole series really for my 10 books I couldn't live without. The 9th book I don't actually have physically to hand because I lent it to my mum and she still hasn't given it back to me, and I think she's just read 10 pages of it, and I think she spilled a cup of coffee over it, and I think that's probably about it. But she watched a programme on it and she heard all about it. I think she might have even seen the film, and she was like, oh my gosh, loved it. And I was like, you have to read the book because the book is so special. And that is The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. Now, what I really loved about the book was that it was told just totally in letter format, which I really liked, really liked. And it was so interesting because at points, you know, you feel like, oh, there's stuff that I don't know, or you see a letter to someone else and you're kind of like, oh, definitely need to reread this book because it's been quite a while, but I loved it. I loved the setting. I didn't realise how Guernsey was, might be a bit naive of me, but until I read it, I didn't realise that Guernsey was actually occupied by the Nazis in World War II. I didn't realise how close the Nazis got. Like, it's scary, guys. But anyway, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the concept. And I have recently picked up a book on the 3 for £5 deal on Amazon, which is also told through letters. I love things like that, Where Rainbows End, and just books that are told through a different sort of format. But it was really interesting. It was historical, but it was just, there was enough sort of like mystery behind it. There was sort of like there's a romance behind it as well. It has been a while, but I kind of was making this list. I was like, I can't make this list without that book, but I haven't got it to show you. I feel a bit like I don't know really what to do with my hands. So, loved it. Need to reread it, need to get it back from my mum, but force her to read it first and actually read it. Now, number 10 is kind of a tie, and I couldn't do this book without talking about a couple of books from my childhood, and I feel like these two are quite similar in the sense that they're both diaries. And don't judge me on these books when I was growing up were absolutely like the bee's knees. I loved these. They were so hilarious. Diaries of a Chav, about a character called Shiraz Bailey Wood. Shiraz as in the wine, Bailey's as in the Irish cream liqueur. That was what she was named after. She lives in Essex. She's a chav, and she is so funny. I can't remember how many books are in this series. I've got all my like children's books down on the bottom shelf down here. I just, these are so hilarious, and I feel like it would be so nostalgic to go back through and reread these. They're not massive, and I seem to remember like flying through them when I read them, but it was so relatable at the time that I read it. Like on the back, on the blurb, is like an excerpt from a diary entry, and it's like, soap stars on skates is on TV, and I'm like, that is so cringy, like nostalgic, like Dancing on Ice obviously, but they didn't use the name Dancing on Ice. I really need to reread these. Maybe I should do like a long weekend, like a bank holiday weekend, and try and reread all, I think it's 5 books, 5 or 6 books. I think it would be so fun to reread them. And I just feel like if you were only keeping 10 books, this is a sort of book that you keep on for something a little bit different and something nostalgic. And then obviously the other one, I've got a lovely movie tie-in edition. It's Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging. It got changed to Perfect Snogging for the movie. Again, this is something that I read, laughed my whole way through. Again, it's like a diary, and I just love the main character, Georgia. She is absolutely hilarious. She's so funny. She's so like oblivious to like the world, and it's just, again, I should do like trying to read these. I think I've got them all. I hope I've got them all. I think this would be a wild time rereading these, and these would be something that I'd pick up and would just laugh my whole way through. Laugh, laugh, laugh. Find it so funny. Find it really nostalgic because like all the boy talk, like, oh, this boy didn't talk to me. Oh, this. I lived for these. I loved them. I flew through them when I first read them, and I was reading them at a time when they were still being released as well, and I don't even know if I finished reading them all because I think I got maybe a bit too old for them. But I think we need to do a reread session on some of these like childhood series, which are just probably going to be hilarious to reread now. So I kind of cheated because it's kind of 11, and like I say, this is a series and this is a series, so all the books count. I'd keep all the series. There's no point keeping the first one in the series, is there? So those are the 10 books. If I could only pick 10, which was a bit of a, twisted it a little bit and bent the rules a little bit, but you have to. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear about what your 10 books, if you could only choose 10 books to keep, what would your 10 books be? I'd love to hear what your answers are. And would you choose any of these books to be on your top 10 list of books to keep? I'd be really intrigued to hear what you all would keep, what you would all choose as your top 10. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give it a like if you liked it. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!